you can be financially responsible and still feel trapped, because being good with money isn't the same as being totally free, especially when it comes to being stuck in a job or a career that is no longer fulfilling and is no longer serving you. In this video, I want to talk about an FU fund and the type of freedom that it can give you if you find yourself dealing with a burnout situation that you're definitely ready to move on from. So let's get into it. You can be doing everything right financially. You can be, have the good job, high income, saving for retirement. You might even have an emergency fund saved. You might even be, managing your debt really well, or completely eliminating your debt, or having eliminated your debt. You're doing everything right. You're successful on paper. You got the good job, you got the house, you may have a family, and you're just adulting very well. You're doing everything that society tells us successful people do. And as long as you're doing all of these things right, you're successful, you should be happy. And that may be your experience on paper, but even though you're doing all of these things right, you still feel stuck. You still feel, a bit trapped by your situation, because maybe, you are in, have a really good job. You are doing everything right. It pays the bills, everything's fine, but you still just don't feel, you're wondering every day, is this it? Like, am I just going to work to, pay the bills? And okay, you may be taking vacations here and there and things of that nature. You may be doing, things that bring you joy, temporary joy. But ultimately, when it comes back down to it, you might just be feeling like, just simply feel a bit empty or a bit unfulfilled in your current career or the job that you're doing. Well, this is exactly why you need an FU fund, or I actually like to call it a freedom fund. But what is an FU fund? I first heard this term used in a book that I read a couple of years ago called The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. And basically, he describes it as basically money that you save to give yourself the option to walk away from a job, that no longer serves you if and in the book, he basically saved up about a year's worth of expenses so that he could actually take a career break. And that's actually what I'm currently in the middle of doing now, is taking a career break. But that's simply what an FU fund is. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It gives you the ability to say FU to a job that, is burning you out, that is no longer a good fit for you, and you're ready for something different, okay? And it's just literally money that you save specifically for that person, for that purpose. It's different from an emergency fund, because I like to think of one as of defensive and one as offensive. The emergency fund it's like more defensive, right? It's money that you set aside for something unexpected, some unexpected expense, which could fall into any category. It's not just if you lose your job. It could be, an unexpected, medical expense, or, car maintenance, or anything that nature, something that would probably cost a lot of money up front, right? So that's what you have an emergency fund for. But an FU fund, or a freedom fund, which I'll call it a freedom fund, that is more of an offensive deal. This is just literally money that you're stashing away to give yourself the option to walk away if the time, ever comes. And honestly, what that's going to do is just going to finally give you leverage, in your career. It's going to definitely give you the option to walk away when you want to. And traditional financial advice tells us to prioritize, saving and investing for retirement. Some date 30 or 40 plus years off into the future, right? that just seems so distant. And you hope that by the time that day comes, you'll still have your health and, um, right frame of mind, and just the ability to even enjoy life at that time. You know what I mean? And, you could be saving for retirement. You could, have the emergency fund. You could be managing your debt really well, or even possibly have eliminated your debt. So you're doing all of these, the right things financially, but you still feel like you don't have options. You still feel kind of trapped by, the high salary that you might be making, or, just feeling like you just have to be working just to pay the bills, and there's like no leeway in between. Well, that's exactly, where a freedom fund comes in, to give you that leverage, to give you that option to walk away and to no longer feel trapped. And I'm speaking from experience, because I'm currently, about 4 months into a career break that I'm planning on being on for maybe about a year. And I did exactly that. I was following, all of the traditional financial advice, saving and investing for retirement. I definitely had an emergency fund, and that was pretty much my priority. It was just investing, aggressively and heavily for retirement, because my goal is actually to retire earlier than the standard retirement age. And when I say retire, I just mean become work optional, like to no longer have to work in order, to make a living. And when I realized that I was dealing with burnout, and that the side effects were a lot more severe than I had ever experienced, and decided that I needed to build an exit plan, the first thing I thought about was the Freedom Fund, that I had, read about before. And I, decided that was what I was going to focus on. So that's exactly what I did. I shifted the focus from um, pouring all of my discretionary and the leftover income that I did have. I shifted the focus from investing that for early retirement into putting it into an FU fund to allow me to walk away from a six-figure tech career, which is exactly what I did about 4 months ago, just to take a career break and focus on recovering from burnout before I choose to enter the workforce. So I'm definitely speaking from experience. I have, done this for myself, and it is working out great for me. So, and it could work out great for you. But when we talk about wanting to design an exit, a corporate exit, walk away from a job that's no longer, that's not aligned with what we truly want to do, it's important to, focus on the financial aspect of it, because that's going to be the foundation that sets you up in order to be able to walk away. So when we think about, you know, creating an FU fund, it's really simple. All you're going to do is just, add up the total cost of your monthly expenses. So how much does it cost you to live, for the month, right? And you're just going to multiply that by however much of a runway you want to give yourself. So whether you want, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, or even longer, it's totally up to you to decide. And again, that depends on your own situation and how much time you feel you may need to, you want to walk away from, corporate burnout before you re-enter the workforce again. So your monthly expense times however many months, and that is your goal for your FU fund. You ideally want to just save that money in like a high yield savings account to help you battle inflation a bit better. And you just proceed from there. For me, I gave myself a 6 month runway. For you, you might want to do 6 months, a year, 3 months, however long. It's totally up to you. And that's honestly the easiest way to, get started with planning your exit. And if this type of content interests you, feel free to hit the subscribe button. I'm currently in the middle of a career break, documenting my journey and resetting and rebuilding life on my own terms. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Kayosha, and I'm here to remind you to choose yourself, because that is the ultimate wealth. Don't just think about the changes that you want to make, go make them.